Welcome to the Blue Collar Future Podcast, where we talk about the future of trade work. I'm your host, Jaden Robison, and here is another solo episode. This episode's going to be kind of my thoughts from the week and some thoughts from recordings I just barely finished, some interviews I just barely did. There's a lot of problems with self-belief in the world right now. Everywhere you go, people are lacking in self-belief, and a lot of times it's why people do not continue what they've set out to do. There's the statistic that most businesses don't make it past 5 years. They fail within 5 years. But what's failure? Failure really is just described as quitting in my mind, just giving up, throwing in the towel. Every business I've ever seen that makes it past 5 years only did it because they kept going. They continued pushing through the struggle and the strife that comes with running a business. From running our own business, I know how hard it is and how hard it is to continue and push through that. Anytime you go and start into a new venture, whether it's a new career, um, a new hobby, a new project, like, for me, this podcast, when you start working out, there's whatever it is, there's always these thoughts of, can I do it? Am I good enough? Will I be able to continue? Why am I even doing this? Why should I even continue doing this? I'm not seeing any results. It's just not worth it. These are natural thoughts that occur when we are going through, pushing through against some resistance in our life. Our minds are trying to take us to a place of equilibrium where we don't change because it doesn't expend any energy. When you're constantly being pushed against, it's uncomfortable. So your mind is going to come up with ways to push you away from or prevent you from pushing back against this resistance. However, that resistance is how we grow as human beings. It's how we learn. It's how we gain more skills. It's how we get better at handling stress. You have to lean into that resistance. One of the reasons why I tell people to work out so often is because it's one of the first places where you can really see the effects that resistance can have on you. When you're working out, you are voluntarily putting yourself through a hard and stressful event. You are voluntarily adding resistance to your body in order to grow, get stronger, to break your body down from that effort so that your body can then rebuild itself stronger. That's one of the reasons why I push it so much. It's the first place that you can really see the effect of that. The hard part about every other area of your life, with your relationships, your work, your mentality, it's hard to see that kind of result at all, let alone so right in front of your face. Working out is kind of one of the first places that you can really see that change and the growth that comes in the form of feeling better, looking better, getting stronger, that you can physically measure. So, that being said, it's hard to lean into that resistance. So many people have problems with this self-belief, and then when it comes down to it, it's hard. It isn't fulfilling, or maybe it doesn't feel like it, and maybe it's harder than you feel like it should be, and you have all of these thoughts of, am I good enough? This person is succeeding, why am I not? So there's all of these things pushing against you, and it's way easier to step back and not lean into that resistance. It's a recurring theme that comes up. I know I talk about a lot of the same stuff on this podcast, and if you've listened to it for long enough now, you'll kind of realize that everything breaks down to the same basic principles. You can break things down over and over and over again, but they always come back to the same things. The same things of pushing yourself is how you're going to grow and get better. If you never do anything uncomfortable, you're never going to quote unquote succeed. The people I see that you might from the outside look at and say that person is successful. They have it made. These people all say the same things to themselves. Someone that you might look at that is running, you know, $1 million business or, generating millions of dollars in revenue or take home, whatever it is that you're holding as success in your mind. They take 5 vacations a year with their family, whatever it is. These people say the same thing to themselves. They wonder, why am I even doing this? Is this even worth it? Am I even making a change? What is my effort amounting to? Even with their perceived success, they're thinking the same thing. The only difference is they're pushing through it, whereas other people let it stop them, let it stop them from continuing. Something that comes up that I have to think about a lot. And we as humans need constant reminder of these types of things. I find myself wondering what I'm even doing, with this podcast. Life gets hard, life gets busy. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of things that are stressful going on around. And without looking deeply into my why, into the podcast, it's hard to see a reason to continue. It's hard to see any benefits that have come from it. It's hard to see a reason to keep going. So I get it. What I do know is pushing through those thoughts and those feelings is how people become successful. That's it. That's how they do it. It's really that simple. The person who succeeds is just the person that didn't quit. At some point, you will succeed. There hardly ever is a time where you are 100% prevented from continuing what you are doing. Most of the time, it is voluntarily giving up on your goals because it's easier to step away from that resistance than it is to lean into it. I want to reiterate that people that become successful are just the people that didn't quit. Think about that for a minute. The more and more people I talk to, the more I hear the same old things, the same old rhetoric of them wondering why they're even doing what they're doing, whether or not they're qualified to do these things. They may have, 20 years of experience, degrees, whatever it is, and they still think the same things. I have one more thing to add to that. In trade work, it's hard to see that you can be successful because there's so much stigma around it as being dirty, unglamorous, low paid, low skilled, uneducated work because education is being touted as the only way to go. So if we're talking about how hard it is and how hard of a time people have with self-belief, imagine how hard it would be to do a job that nobody wants to do, that nobody is grateful that you're doing, and nobody is appreciative of because it's dirty. Imagine how hard that would be with our natural thoughts of um, our natural proneness to not believing in ourselves, how natural it is to just not think that you're able to do these things. It's almost something that you need to practice consistently every single day, telling yourself that you can do it and pushing through these thoughts of wanting to quit. Because why would somebody want to go do a blue collar job where they think that they're not going to be successful? They think they're not going to ever amount to anything because it's dirty, unskilled, uneducated work. Think about that. Think about that in how you're dealing with people that you work with. If you're if you employ people in this industry, about how they may be feeling about their job, about how you may be feeling with your job. It's so easy to quit and to not believe in ourselves. My guest, the reason why I bring all this up is my guest in one of the upcoming episodes said that the number one thing that contractors deal with is not believing in themselves. And I really been thinking about that a lot because it's one of the things that almost everybody has a problem with. We're all talking about the same things, maybe wording them differently, maybe presenting them differently. It all comes down to the same things. And I'll leave you with that on this episode today. We've got a couple more guests coming up. And like I've mentioned before, I'll probably be bringing on a co-host soon once we kind of get some details ironed out there. I'm super excited for what's coming, and I just won't quit just because I'm having these doubts. That's one of the most important things I can leave with. Everybody I've seen that does a podcast that doesn't make it very long quit before they ever became successful. And same thing with a business, same thing with your place of employment. If you do not believe in yourself, you won't succeed. I appreciate all of the people listening to this podcast, and I will see you guys next week.